The sky cracked with flame as the forests along Rome's northern border burned. Screams bled through smoke like dying prayers. At the edge of a devastated village, a boy clutched a dying hound as embers fell like ash rain. His name was Lucan, 12 winters old, eyes wide with grief, body wrapped in smoke-stained linen. Behind him, Roman soldiers lay broken, armor blackened and faces frozen in agony. Civilians ran in every direction, colliding with fallen carts and scorched beasts. Gaius Varro, a veteran centurion, staggered through the chaos, dragging a limping foot and shouting over the roar, "Fall back to the ridge. Protect the children!" A young woman, Thea, sobbed beside her brother's corpse as their home collapsed in fire. There was no time to mourn. From the burning tree line, the silhouettes of barbarian warriors emerged. Feral, blood-painted, and unrelenting. The invasion had begun, not with banners, but with fire, terror, and silence broken only by the dying. Lucan didn't stop running, not when his lungs burned, not when the hound whimpered, not even when the screams behind him faded into silence. The ground beneath his bare feet was slick with ashened blood. He reached a ridge overlooking the valley, the only path not engulfed by flame. The moment he stopped, he collapsed to his knees. From above, he could see the full devastation. The village was gone. Only a storm of smoke and fire remained. The hound licked his face weakly. "You're not leaving me too," Lucan whispered, voice cracking. Behind him, footsteps crunched. He turned with wide eyes, clutching the animal tighter. Gaius Varro stood there, face bleeding, sword still in hand. "You did well, boy," the centurion said. "But we're not safe yet." He helped Lucan up. Below them, a second blaze rose from another outpost, already under siege. Varro muttered, "They're not just riding, they're cleansing." And with that, the nightmare deepened. Night fell quickly, as if the heavens themselves turned away. The survivors regrouped near a dried riverbed, led by Gaius Varro's hoarse commands. Perhaps 20 souls remained from over 200. Most were too wounded to travel far. Thea sat silently beside a dying elder, whispering songs to ease his passing. Lucan sat alone, the hounds breathing shallow against his chest. "You think the legions will come?" Thea finally asked, voice hollow. Varro stared into the dark. "No, they don't know what's coming, and if they do, they've abandoned us." Silence followed. The flames in the distance lit the horizon like a second sun. Somewhere in the shadows, a child cried for a mother who no longer breathed. The invaders hadn't chased them. Not yet. But it was only a matter of time. Rome's line had broken, and with it, the illusion of safety. At dawn, frost covered the earth like a burial shroud. Gaius walked among the dead, laying Roman coins on their eyes with trembling hands. Thea watched from afar, clutching her brother's worn leather pouch. "Do you still believe in God, centurion?" she asked. Gaius didn't look up. "I believe in duty." He placed the last coin and stood. "And right now, duty means getting you all south of the river. If we can reach Fort Hadria, we might have a chance." Thea nodded, but her eyes flicked to the forest. "They're watching us." Gaius followed her gaze. In the tree line briefly, a flash of movement. A shape. A watcher. Then, it vanished. Lucan stood slowly, his hound growling low. The silence was heavier than before. The hunt hadn't ended. It had only begun. They marched in silence, moving quickly through forgotten trails and deer paths. Gaius led with blade drawn. Lucan stayed close behind him, every shadow whispering threats. Birds no longer sang. The wind had a voice, a cruel one. "How many days to the fort?" Thea asked. "2, if the gods favor us," Gaius said. "Less, if they're merciful and kill us sooner." The group barely chuckled. Every creak in the woods made them flinch. Then, thunder, but not from the sky. Hooves, like me. Dozens. From the rear. Gaius spun, eyes flaring. "Run, now!" From the trees behind, barbarian riders burst through like demons, howling, blades raised. It was no longer an escape. It was the beginning of the real war. Mud and blood soaked their sandals as the survivors scrambled up the ravine's edge. The barbarians didn't pursue beyond the ridge. They'd vanished into the forest as suddenly as they came. Gaius called the halt, his chest heaving. "They're playing with us," he muttered. "Testing our weakness." Lucan dropped to his knees, clutching the hound, whose breathing now rattled like wind through broken reeds. Thea leaned against a rock, blood on her sleeve, her own or someone else's, she didn't know. One of the elders, Julianus, gasped, This isn't war. It's slaughter." Gaius turned to the remaining dozen survivors, voice low but fierce. "They want fear more than territory, and fear they'll have if we let them." His words stirred something, resolve or despair, it wasn't clear. Above, the smoke from their village still lingered like a curse. Below, only silence. They were caught between what had already burned and what would be next. Later that day, they found an abandoned Roman watchpost. Walls cracked, food stores raided, but shelter nonetheless. As dusk fell, they lit no fires. Thea tended to wounds while Gaius studied a crude map scratched onto a wooden board inside the main hut. "Fort Hadria lies southeast. We move at dawn," he said. Julianus spoke from the shadows. "And what if Hadria has fallen?" Gaius didn't look up. "Then we die with swords in our hands." Thea flinched, whispering, "I'd rather not die at all." A silence followed. Even Lucan said nothing. The hound now lay still, unmoving except for a flicker of ear. The group ate quietly, listening to wolves howl in the distance. Each bite tasted like ash. They were alive, but no longer living. Something in the silence told them. The empire they believed in was no longer watching. That night, Lucan couldn't sleep. He stared at the hound's shallow breathing, whispering stories to it, tales of gods and heroes, hoping the words might keep it alive. A soft rustle made him look up. Thea sat beside him, holding a strip of dried meat. "He should eat," she said softly, "even if just to feel he's still part of us." Lucan took it wordlessly. The silence stretched. Then she added, "You remind me of my little brother." He never stopped talking. Lucan forced a smile. Maybe he was trying to fill the silence. Thea looked down. Maybe. Outside, Gaius kept watch alone, standing like a broken statue. The moon lit only half his face. He had been through wars, rebellions, betrayals, but nothing like this. The enemy wasn't just raiders. They were something else. Something ancient. Something patient. And he feared Rome wasn't prepared for what lay ahead. Before dawn, Gaius paced the perimeter alone, sword drawn, senses sharp. That's when he saw it, symbols carved into trees around the outpost. Not Roman, not barbarian, older, twisted shapes that felt wrong to the eyes. He called Thea to examine them. Her eyes narrowed. "These aren't for war. They're for summoning, or warning." Gaius touched one and shivered. "Whatever's behind this isn't just here for land. This is ritual." As the others woke, unease rippled through the camp. Even the hound began to whimper, ears pressed back. "We leave now," Gaius barked. Weapons in hand, no talking. As they packed, a foul wind blew through the trees. No birdsong, no insects. Just stillness and decay. Rome's border hadn't just been breached, it had been cursed. They moved in silence, weapons drawn, eyes darting. The forest had changed. Roots twisted unnaturally, and trees leaned as if listening. The sun rose but brought no warmth. After hours of tense marching, a sound broke the stillness. Bells. Dozens of them, distant and rhythmic. Then, on a ridge above, they saw a sight that stole the breath from their lungs. A Roman patrol, at least 20 men, hung from trees like warning signs, armor rusted, flesh marked with the same strange symbols. Thea gasped, hand to mouth. They weren't just killed. They were offered. Gaius clenched his fists. This is beyond war. This is desecration. Lucan stared, frozen. The hound growled low. The message was clear. Rome would not reclaim this land. It had been taken by something far older than empire. The forest finally broke, revealing the ruins of a Roman villa once used as a border command. Vines choked the marble columns. Statues of forgotten gods leaned sideways, faces weathered smooth. Gaius signaled for a rest. "We need water, shelter, scouting," he said. The survivors moved cautiously, eyes scanning broken windows. Lucan approached a shattered eagle crest lying in the grass. "Is this Rome?" he asked. Gaius didn't answer. He only stared at the cracked floor mosaic, once an emblem of order, now trampled by time and war. Thea entered the atrium, finding old scrolls torn and scattered. "They left in a hurry," she whispered. "Or were taken." In the corner, bones, human, armored, scorched. No battle signs. Just decay. Lucan bent to pick up a rusted dagger, its edge blunted but hilt still firm. "What do we do now?" he asked. Gaius turned slowly. "No. We stopped running, and we learn what we're truly facing." That night, while others slept beneath collapsed arches, Gaius sat by a crumbling fountain. Thea joined him quietly. "I heard the Empire lost Eloria," she said. Gaius didn't respond at first. Then he muttered, "They lost it the moment they stopped caring about the borders." She asked, "Why stay loyal?" He met her gaze. "Because someone has to be." A beat. Then Thea said, "There's something I haven't told you. Before the attack, I found records, names, villages marked with symbols, mine included. They were studying the tribes, experimenting." Gaius' jaw tightened. "So, this wasn't a surprise. It was allowed." Thea nodded. "And now it's out of control." Gaius gripped the edge of the fountain. "Then Rome's not just dying. It's rotting from the inside." Nearby, Lucan dreamed fitfully, the hound resting its muzzle on his chest. The night was silent, but heavy with the weight of betrayed loyalties. Morning brought no warmth. The survivors prepared to move. Gaius, now more rigid than ever, ordered a split, scouts ahead, others guarding rear. As they moved, Lucan whispered, "They never meant for us to make it." Thea replied, "But we're still here." They traveled through a burned village, once Roman, now just bones and soot. A makeshift altar stood at its center, built from Roman helmets and human skulls. Gaius stared at it, jaw tight. They're not just killing, they're rewriting. Nearby, a child found a discarded soldier's journal. Gaius flipped through it. Pages described not just movements, but rituals. Tests. Words like the sacrifice of legionaries and blood renewal filled the margins. The Empire tried to weaponize the old magic, Thea said. And it turned on them. Gaius tore out the last page and burned it. Then let's give them something new to fear. Us. They reached a high bluff overlooking the river, a wide expanse that marked the boundary between what was Rome and what had become ungoverned chaos. Gaius surveyed it carefully. "This is where we draw the line," he said. He explained the plan, a signal fire atop the hill, meant to alert any scouts from Fort Hadria. If anyone's still alive, they'll see it. They worked quickly, stacking wood and pitch. Lucan tied the signal cloth, a torn standard, onto a pike. Thea looked out across the river, eyes distant. "What if we're the last ones?" Gaius responded. "Then we burn bright enough to be remembered." As the sun dipped low, the signal fire roared to life. Smoke curled upward into a blood-orange sky. Somewhere beyond, something moved. Whether friend or foe, they would know someone still resisted. As darkness fell, the signal fire still burned, a lone beacon in a sea of shadow. The group camped near its base, weapons close, hearts tighter. Lucan sat beside the hound, its breathing now shallow and strained. "Don't leave me," he whispered. Thea sat nearby, sewing a torn sleeve with shaking hands. Gaius stood alone on the ridge. Then, a sound. Horns. Faint but real. From across the river. Eyes turned upward. Shapes moved in the fog, figures, armored and marching. For a heartbeat, hope surged. Then came the light, green and unnatural, from behind the figures. The shapes weren't Roman. They wore Roman armor, but their movements were wrong. Twisted. Gaius whispered, "They took our dead." The fire crackled louder, as if it knew. The hope twisted into dread. And Act 3 ended not in silence, but in the sound of ghostly horns crossing into the dark. The silence after the ghostly horns was unbearable. Gaius kept his sword drawn through the night, pacing like a wolf. Come dawn, the fog remained thick and still. No sign of movement. Whatever wore that armor, it wasn't alive, Thea said. Gaius nodded grimly. But it remembers how to march. The signal fire had burned low. Lucan stirred beside his hound, eyes dull with exhaustion. Then the cries came. Distant, human, panicked. A young scout stumbled from the forest's edge, blood trailing down his leg. "They're coming," he gasped. "The cursed men, and someone leads them. A Roman, a commander." Gaius stepped forward. "Who?" The boy shook his head. "I didn't see. Just. They followed him like a god." Thea whispered. "A traitor?" Gaius replied, "No, a ghost, but one of our own." And for the first time, fear crept into the veteran's voice. The scout's wounds were worse than expected. Deep, precise, surgical. "This wasn't a beast," Thea said. "Someone marked him." As she stitched his flesh, she uncovered a symbol carved just beneath the skin, the same spiral shape they'd seen in the forest. Lucan stared. "That's the one from the trees," he said. Gaius turned away, hand to his mouth. "I've seen this before," he muttered. "Years ago, in Thracia, when a Roman general defected, claimed he found a truer Rome in the wild." Thea's voice dropped. "And they let him live?" Gaius replied, "They buried the truth. And the men he led vanished." The group fell silent. It wasn't a new enemy. It was one born from their own blood, Rome's sins given flesh. The scout coughed up black bile. By sundown, he was dead. They buried him without rites. There were no more prayers left. Later, Thea found Lucan alone beside the gravesite. He was etching something into a piece of bone, his hound's name. "He's fading," Lucan said. "I can feel it." Thea sat beside him. "So are we all. But we don't have to disappear." Lucan looked at her, eyes sharp despite the dirt and grief. "I want to fight. Like Gaius, like you." She placed a hand on his. "Then don't fight to avenge, fight to protect." A rustle interrupted them. Gaius appeared, but not alone. A captured man in torn Roman armor stumbled behind him, wrists bound. "He was watching us," Gaius said. "Found him just beyond the tree line." The man grinned. "I was once like you, but I saw the truth." His mouth bore the spiral carved in flesh. "Rome is dead. You just haven't accepted it yet." Lucan stared, jaw clenched. "We'll bury you next." The prisoner was restrained in the villa's atrium, eyes gleaming with fanatical devotion. "Who do you serve?" Gaius asked. "The true Rome," the man said. "The one untouched by weakness, beyond borders, beyond death." Thea stepped forward. "What's your leader's name?" The prisoner smiled. "You knew him once, Gaius." Silence. Then Gaius whispered, "Tiberian, his old comrade, presumed dead. A man who once saved his life in Germania. He led the last failed campaign past the river," Gaius said. "Now he returns, as this." The prisoner laughed. He saw what lies beneath the eagle. A god that never bled. And he bleeds for it now. Gaius turned to Thea. "He knows our route. He'll lead them here." Without hesitation, Gaius drew his blade. The man never stopped smiling, even as his blood joined the dust. Night came like a hammer. The air grew colder, and the survivors prepared for siege. Gaius spoke quietly to each person, assigning posts, giving a nod or shoulder clasp with silent finality. "No matter what comes, we hold this ground," he said. Thea stood atop the watchtower, torch in hand, eyes scanning the trees. Lucan sat beside the hound, whispering, "I'll protect you, even if you don't wake up." Then, the drums. Faint at first, then louder. Rhythmic. Not of war, but of ritual. From the trees, torches appeared. Dozens. Hundreds. A procession. In its center, him. Tiberian. Cloaked in blackened Roman armor, face veiled in gold. He raised a hand, and the drums stopped. "Gaius," he called. "You once followed me into glory. Now follow me into eternity." Gaius whispered, "He's already dead." But Thea answered, "No, he's something worse." The first wave hit just after midnight. No horns. No warnings. Just the sound of blades tearing cloth and bone. The attackers came in silence. Former Romans twisted by rites, their eyes vacant and movements inhuman. Gaius met them head-on, his sword flashing in firelight. "Hold the lines, no retreat," he roared. Thea fired arrows from the tower, each shot deliberate, her face streaked with blood and sweat. Lucan hid behind a crumbled wall, shielding the hound with his body. The creature whimpered weakly, tail twitching in fear. A scream tore through the dark. Julianus had fallen, throat cut, the spiral symbol carved into his chest even as he died. Gaius fought like a man possessed, cutting down 2 foes, 3, then staggered back, blood pouring from a wound in his side. The enemy wasn't trying to conquer. They were trying to convert through death. And they were winning. When the dead pulled back just before dawn, the survivors counted their losses. Only 8 remained. Gaius sat slumped against a column, Thea pressing cloth against his bleeding ribs. "They left on purpose," she muttered. "Why stop now?" Gaius grimaced. "To weaken us, to wait until we break." Thea looked toward the woods. "We can't stay here." He nodded. "We move, deep into the forest. Guerrilla tactics. Hit and vanish." Lucan, silent until now, stepped forward. "Then let me help." He held the rusted dagger with white-knuckled fists. Gaius looked into the boy's eyes. "You already are." They buried the dead in haste, without rites, without tears. The forest awaited. And in the ashes of Rome's ruin, rebellion flickered, not in numbers, but in the will to fight back. They vanished into the wilderness, leaving no trail. Thea led them through forgotten deer paths and root-covered ravines. Days blurred. They struck like ghosts, burning enemy supply wagons, setting traps, freeing captives from defiled outposts. Lucan moved quietly now, growing into his fear, not away from it. The hound, though weaker, followed at his heels, refusing to be left behind. Gaius taught the survivors how to fight dirty, ambush, mislead, vanish. In the dark, they began painting Roman armor with red slashes, symbols of defiance. "Let them fear what they made," Thea said. For each success, they knew retaliation would come. But they were no longer lambs. They had become wolves in the ruins of empire. And wolves bite hardest when cornered. On the 5th night, they found an ancient temple buried beneath overgrowth. The marble cracked, but statues still stood, some with human bones at their feet. "This place is older than Rome," Gaius said. "Maybe older than memory." Inside, they found torches, maps, and something stranger, a mural of a spiral swallowing an eagle. Thea ran her fingers along the paint. It wasn't prophecy. It was warning. Lucan looked up at her. "What do we do with it?" Gaius took a torch and set the mural aflame. "We don't carry their gods with us. We bury them here." The fire spread. The ceiling cracked. They left before it fell, watching the temple collapse behind them. Dust rose like smoke from a tomb. There would be no returning. They set camp beneath an old pine canopy. Thea kept watch while the others rested. Gaius, bandaged but quiet, cleaned his sword under starlight. Lucan sat alone, the hound's head in his lap. "He's not breathing," he whispered. Thea crossed to him slowly. "Lucan." But he shook his head. "He stayed with me when no one else did." Gaius joined them, laying a hand on the boy's shoulder. "He was braver than most men I've known." They dug a grave beneath the pines. No words spoken, just the sound of dirt and grief. As they covered the body, a distant flare lit the night sky. Green fire, unnatural and pulsing. Tiberian had found them. Lucan stood, face cold. "Then let him come." The fire in his eyes now matched the ones they lit in the trees. They reached the black ridge at dusk, the last defensible ground before the river. Jagged rocks jutted from the earth like broken spears. Thea scouted ahead, bow ready. Gaius limped behind, supported by Lucan. "This is it," Gaius said, eyes scanning the cliffs. "Here, we make our stand." The survivors dug in quickly. Spike pits, rock walls, torches positioned to light the valley. The green flare in the sky faded, but its afterglow remained on their skin. "He'll come tonight," Thea said. Gaius nodded. "Well, Aliol. And when he does, we bleed him dry." Lucan set down the last of the fire traps, staring at the growing night. "We may not survive." Gaius placed a hand on his shoulder. "No, but they'll remember we didn't run." As shadows lengthened and the air chilled, every breath became a promise, to die with honor or not at all. As night consumed the sky, they saw him, Tiberian, standing at the opposite ridge beneath a banner made of flesh and bone. Behind him, the twisted dead gathered like a sea. The ground trembled. "When I raise my hand," Gaius said, "light the valley." Thea and Lucan nodded. Tiberian raised his own hand, gold mask glowing in torchlight. The dead surged forward. Gaius roared, "Now!" The valley erupted in flame, pits bursting, traps springing. Screams echoed, but the horde kept coming, limbs aflame, faces smiling through the fire. Gaius charged down the hill with a war cry, his blade slicing through 3 foes before the 4th drove a spear through his thigh. He fell to one knee but kept swinging. "Hold the line," he screamed. Lucan ran past him, lighting more traps. Behind them, Thea loosed arrow after arrow, each one a prayer wrapped in steel. Smoke choked the stars. Gaius fell again, this time not rising. He pulled himself toward the fallen Roman banner, hand dragging through blood and ash. A twisted soldier raised a blade over him, until Lucan struck it down, dagger sinking deep. "You don't get to take him," he hissed. Gaius looked up, blood in his teeth. "Protect her." Lucan nodded. But Thea was already gone, charging toward Tiberian through the chaos. Arrows gone, sword drawn. "This ends with you," she shouted. Tiberian turned, unmoved. They clashed beneath the burning sky, steel on steel, fury on faith. Sparks flew. He struck hard, but Thea was faster. A cut across his mask revealed the man beneath, still Roman, still human. "Why?" she cried. "Because Rome forgot me," he answered. But the dark did not. He struck again, and this time she fell. Thea gasped on the ground, blood seeping through her armor. Tiberian raised his sword for the final blow, until a howl cut through the din. The hound, weak and near death, charged from the shadows and clamped its jaws on Tiberian's arm. He screamed, flinging the beast aside, but it gave Lucan the moment he needed. He lunged with Thea's fallen sword, driving it through Tiberian's chest. The golden mask cracked fully and fell away. The face beneath was younger than expected. Calm, duchy, at peace. "You chose well," Tiberian said, then collapsed. The horde froze. Without their leader, they faltered, shrieked, then fell, like puppets cut from strings. Silence returned. The fire burned low. The hound whimpered once and went still. Lucan fell beside it, hand resting on its flank. "We won," he whispered, but it felt like loss. Dawn broke over a battlefield of still bodies and smoldering soil. Survivors, only 4, stood among the wreckage. Thea, bruised and limping, leaned on a staff. Lucan held the cracked Roman standard in one hand, the hound's collar in the other. Gaius lay beneath a pine, finally still, blade resting on his chest. "He bought us time," Thea said. "Enough to matter." They buried him on the ridge. No words, just a stone marker and a piece of the eagle crest placed above. Lucan stared into the rising sun. "Do you think they'll come now? The legions?" Thea shook her head. "They never were." A long silence. Then she said, "But we'll rebuild, not for Rome, for what's left of us." Lucan nodded. In the light of morning, they turned toward the trees, not fleeing, not hunting, just surviving. And that was enough. 3 days passed. No reinforcements came. No messengers. No sign from Fort Hadria. But the silence no longer terrified them. It simply confirmed what they already knew. Rome was gone. Not in name perhaps, but in spirit. Thea led the survivors deeper into the highlands, where old mines and mountain passes could offer shelter. Lucan walked at her side, standard over his shoulder, the hound's collar tied to his wrist. "Do we keep the banner?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "But not for them, for us." They passed an abandoned shrine, its statue headless. Thea paused, then knocked it over. No more blind gods. That night, they camped in silence under the stars. The fire was small, but warm. Lucan whispered, "He would have liked this, Gaius." Thea nodded. "He died fighting the rot." "That's more than most." Somewhere in the woods, an owl called. Life was returning. By the 5th day, they found others, scattered refugees hiding in caves, broken farmers, mothers clutching children. News traveled fast. "A boy and a woman killed the ghost of the empire," one whispered. "They lit fire in the bones of Rome," said another. Thea stepped forward. "We're not heroes. We're survivors. That's all. But hope, once ignited, doesn't obey commands." People followed them. Not out of fear, out of belief. Lucan spoke to the children, told them stories of the hound who defied death, of a woman who shot fire from the sky, and a warrior who stood against the tide. It was all true, he told them, but also, it wasn't just us. It was everyone who didn't run. Thea watched from a distance, her eyes glassy. In the void left by an empire, something else had begun to stir, something slower, but far more enduring. They returned once, weeks later, to the Black Ridge. The battlefield was untouched. Bones scattered like dried leaves, armor rusted into the soil. The grave of Gaius stood, still marked with the eagle crest. Thea knelt beside it, placing a folded cloth, his cloak, on the stone. "Rest now," she whispered. Lucan stood quietly, lighting a single flame. "We buried the old Rome here," he said. "The rest can rise in its place." As they turned to leave, they noticed something: flowers. Wild blooms growing through cracks where blood once flowed. Not planted, just returned. Life didn't ask permission. It simply filled the void. Thea looked back one last time. "Let them come again," she said. "We'll be ready." Then, without ceremony, they walked away. The torch burned behind them, no longer for signal, but remembrance. Seasons turned. Snow covered the mountains, then thawed. More refugees came, more stories told. The settlement became more than a camp. It became a haven. Thea trained the next generation: archery, defense, survival. She didn't speak often of what happened, but when she did, she always ended the same way. We stood. That's what mattered. Lucan became the storyteller. His voice, once timid, now commanded firelight and silence. The children gathered close to hear about the cursed general, the golden mask, and the hound that wouldn't let go. "And the boy?" one asked. Lucan smiled. "He lived, not because he was strong, but because he never stopped choosing to try. The old gods were gone, but something better remained, truth taught in whispers. Legacy etched in scars. Not a monument, a movement." In the final scene, the camera would linger on the boy, Lucan, now older, standing atop a ridge at dawn. The Roman standard is still with him, but it's changed. No longer gold. Now dyed in earthy red and ash, frayed but carried high. The hound's collar remains on his belt, worn but intact. He watches as children spar below, their laughter rising with the mist. Thea joins him, her hair streaked with gray, but eyes still sharp. They share a look, no words needed. Behind them, the sun breaks the horizon. The world is still wild, still dangerous, but it belongs to them now. A place rebuilt not by conquest, but by choice. Lucan finally says, "Almost to the wind," he said, "we'd be remembered." Thea replies, "We were." As the light spreads across the valley, the final image freezes, not on fire or ruin, but on a banner flapping against the rising sun.